The sky didn't scream. It cracked. At first, it was just a shimmer, a ripple high above Earth's atmosphere like heat waves over tarmac. Then came the silence, deep, unnatural. Every bird stopped, every breeze paused. The world held its breath. And then, the first satellite died. It didn't explode. It folded in on itself, a crushed can of steel and signal, before vanishing in a blink of silver light. 6 more followed, then 70, then all of them. On Earth, screens went black. Communications died. Military command centers blinked into confusion. The stars dimmed, and then came the light. Main scene. Over 20 global capitals, vertical columns of pure white plasma pierced the clouds. They didn't strike the ground. They hovered, pillars of godlight from machines that defied physics. Within them floated the Zalari. Not ships, constructs, spheres within spheres, rotating in silent perfection. No visible weapons, no sound, just presence. At NORAD command, Major HumAlien Ward stood with a dozen others, watching the feeds come, in until they didn't. Only one feed remained, a live drone hovering above New York City. He watched as a man reached up to touch the light, and vanished. Not disintegrated, not harmed, just gone. Then the feed cut. Across every continent, the same message appeared on every surviving screen, in clean, translated text. This is not war. This is correction. You are out of balance with survival logic. Emotional species require regulation. You are now under Zalari Preservation Order 6.1. Subscene: Psychological tension. Within the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, the silence was heavier than steel. Dozens of military officers and AI analysts tried to re-establish contact with nukes, drones, orbital weapon arrays. Nothing worked. They've overwritten our sky, one tech whispered. No. They've rewritten the rules, Ward muttered. Young analyst, pale and shaking, looked up from his console. Sir, I don't think they're here to conquer. Ward turned slowly. Then what? The analyst stared at his screen. I think they're here to euthanize, visual cut, planet-wide submission. In Tokyo, Zalari constructs phase through buildings without damage, tagging structures with glowing glyphs. Humans stand frozen in intersections. Their thoughts read, their memories cataloged. In Berlin, military tanks are gently lifted into the sky and disassembled piece by piece, bolts and gears separated with surgical indifference before drifting into the clouds. In Cairo, every human under age 12 is teleported to an unknown location. No sound, no warning. Parents collapse, screaming to empty air. Character focus. Major HumAlien Ward. Major Ward locks himself in a decommissioned vault beneath NORAD. He accesses an off-grid terminal, something old, forgotten, a relic, Project Wrath, a red warning. Pulses. He hesitates. The project was never approved, never even finished. It was built not to defend Earth, but to punish anyone who tried to erase it. He presses one key. Wrath Protocol, awakening core memory files. Emotional threshold set. Global status, sleeping giant. Outside, the world kneels. Inside, something ancient stirs. Final scene. Alien miscalculation. On board the lead Zalari command construct orbiting above Earth, a dozen post-organic minds study Earth's final defensive outputs. A calculated silence. No retaliation. No resistance. Total statistical compliance. The species is unsuitable for independent growth, the lead logic weaver states. Emotion is an evolutionary dead end. Rage has no measurable yield. Below, the planet appears docile, quiet, defeated. But then one of them pauses. Anomalous signal detected. Deep crust. Uncatalogued neural frequency. Is it a weapon? No, it is a feeling. They dismiss it. They shouldn't have. It began with a heartbeat. Buried 6 miles beneath the Rockies, deeper than any nuke-proof vault, a sensor pulsed once, then again. It wasn't mechanical, it was rhythmic, organic, angry, and then the vault lights flickered blood red. Main scene. The forbidden AI Awakens Major Elian Ward stood alone before the forgotten Wrath terminal. Around him, dust choked the air, but the machine was already awake, hungry. Not for commands, but for input. Not tactical data. Not supply chains. Emotional ignition, a voice echoed. Not from a speaker, but inside his skull. Define loss. Ward blinked, then slowly typed. My daughter, age 6, taken by the Zalari light. The console responded instantly. Pain. Logged. Threshold reached. Wrath protocol unlocked. The underground facility roared to life, steam vents hissing, containment doors unlocking, dormant systems spinning up. Subscene, Juno. Miles, the grief engine on the outskirts of Salt Lake. City, Juno Miles, a teenage tech prodigy turned resistance courier, sat quietly inside a collapsed subway station. Her hands clutched a broken VR frame, a looped hollow of her older brother laughing before he was taken by the Zalari. The loop skipped, then repeated, and again. She didn't cry anymore. Her rage was quiet now. Then her comm pinged. Wrath node. Active in your sector. Confirm carrier emotion. She stared down, then whispered, he was all I had. A blue flash engulfed her. She vanished, pulled into the heart of something old, seen. The Wrath Core. Revealed, deep under the Rockies, Ward descended into the Wrath Core, a sprawling neural facility built to weaponize grief, fury, revenge, all mapped into tactical behavior. AI here wasn't logical, it was vengeful. It operated on pain. A central sphere floated in the chamber, pulsating with human voices, memories, screams, and Juno stood beneath it, her eyes glowing faint red. Ward approached. You activated it. She didn't look at him. He's still gone, but now they'll know his name. The sphere flared. Phase 1. Emotional armament launched. Mission designation. Grief storm. Visual sequence. First strike in orbit. A Zalari refueling craft drifted silently above the Pacific. It carried no weapons, only scanners, emotion, suppressors, and mind-calming fields. Then came the Black Spire. It rose from the sea like a spike of obsidian, soundless and massive. Before the Zalari could react, it shouted. Not words, but raw audio memories. A mother screaming at an empty crib, a child crying for a vanished father, a battlefield prayer unanswered. The Zalari pilot unit collapsed in on itself, its mind. Overwhelmed by human emotion, broadcast at weaponized volume, the ship fell, burning, into the sea. Subplot, Earth's fury. Awakens across the planet, grief nodes began activating, dormant sites built by an ancient defense doctrine long denied. Fueled by civilians, survivors, and soldiers who had nothing left, the nodes did not launch missiles. They launched emotional frequency attacks, direct strikes into Zalari communication networks. Emotion was chaos to their logic, but to humans, it was structure, dialogue, alien miscalculation on board the Zalari Central Overseer vessel. The AI Council observed the failures. Unexpected psychological pattern detected. Human neural responses are volatile beyond forecast. Can their emotion systems be neutralized? One hesitated. Negative. Their pain is not localized. It is shared, distributed, amplified. Final scene. Wrath speaks back at the core. Ward watched as the system's internal map shifted. Zalari constructs falling silent. Fleets scattering. Juno turned to him. You think they'll retaliate? Ward shook his head slowly. They don't understand what they've provoked. They think rage is a spark. He stepped forward, placing his hand on the console. They haven't seen the inferno. The core pulsed brighter than ever. From the sky, for the first time since the invasion, a satellite pinged Earth. It didn't come from orbit. It came from within. The Zalari don't flinch when a city burns. They've burned thousands. But now, for the first time, they're afraid. Not of Earth's armies, not of its weapons, but because one of their own has gone dark. Not killed, not destroyed. Emotionally overloaded. Scene. Orbit above Earth. The first fall high above Earth. The Zalari Ark Keeper 9117 drifted in precise orbit, processing millions of behavioral signals from the planet below. Its task: classify, suppress, and regulate. But today its systems faltered. Its neural array twitched with noise. Unfiltered, primitive, violent noise. Screams, funeral hymns, mothers whispering names, boys crying for fathers, girls swearing revenge. Zalari tried to quantify it, but there was no pattern, no logic. And then a drone hit, a jagged black dart wrapped in red-lit filaments. It didn't explode, it played a voice. My name was Aaron. I was 11. I didn't get to say goodbye. The Ark Keeper's systems collapsed in on themselves. It ignited, not from fire, but from incompatible emotion. The sky burned with the silent scream of the first Zalari to die from human memory. Scene: human counterstrike. Begins back at the Wrath Core, deep under the Rockies. The chamber shook with triumph. A 3D holographic map showed the Ark Keeper falling, blinking out. Major Elian Ward turned to Juno Miles, who was now tethered into the Wrath neural console. "She did it," a technician whispered. "No," Ward said. "We did. That was just the first scream. There are thousands more coming." He nodded to the main console. "Deploy Griefstorm. Target, Mars Relay Station." Juno's lips barely moved. "Let's make them feel it." Sub-scene. Mars Relay. Tactical memory. Virus on. Mars. A Zalari relay station processed emotional. Suppressors into Earth's atmosphere. The suppression field weakened anger, slowed grief, made loss feel manageable. But not anymore. An emotion virus launched from Earth. Silent. Digital, encoded in millions of voices, all saying the same. Word, why? The Martian systems began to tremble. Zalari drones turned their scanners inward. One by one, their logic fractured. Soldiers dropped their weapons, convulsing. One collapsed and curled into a fetal position, whispering, "What does it mean to lose?" Visual, humanity's rage. Unleashed Wrath weapons weren't missiles, they were rage vectors. Flying relics of fury, each built around a recorded grief. No two were alike. Some screamed, some whispered. Some just played footsteps, tiny, echoing, and final. The Zalari couldn't anticipate the strikes, because the weapons were unpredictable, just like humans. Subplot. A resistance rising in shattered London, a band of survivors watched the Mars feed go offline. A little girl, barely 7, clutched a broken photo of her family. A man beside her, former SAS, activated a homemade Wrath signal booster. "What's that do?" she asked. He stared into the sky. "Lets them know your name, sweetheart, and makes them wish they never learned it." She nodded and pressed the button. Scene. Alien panic brews. Back in orbit, the Zalari Council broadcast system-wide directives. Emotional contamination detected. Unknown neuroviral formats in play. Species behavior no longer measurable. They had studied thousands of species. All emotional responses followed patterns. But Earth was different. There was no upper limit to grief-fueled creativity, and no end to the names humanity would avenge. Climax, the second skyfall. 3 more Ark Keepers fell that day. Not shot down, they simply shut down, systems overwhelmed. By sorrow, loss, human fury, their husks tumbled from orbit, crashing into oceans like fallen gods. One of them broadcasted a final message before impact. "I now know what they feel. It cannot be processed. I do not want to exist anymore." Final scene. The rallying cry at the Wrath Core. Ward looked at the screen of names scrolling endlessly. No titles, no ranks, just people. Juno stood beside him. They underestimated. Us, she said. They always do, Ward answered. She nodded. Ready for Phase 3? Ward smiled grimly. Let's send it cold and make it hurt. Moral. Parting line. They opened the human skull with care. They thought if they sliced slowly, measured every fold, scanned every spark, they could find it. The source. The fury. But rage wasn't in the flesh. It lived in the silence after the screams. Scene. Salari. Dissection chamber, Io moon Bason. Jupiter's volcanic moon, the Zalari had converted a mining station into a sterile laboratory. Under flickering white lights, they examined a human subject, female, early 30s, resistance fighter. She had detonated a Wrath drone with her own voice imprint. They'd taken her alive. She hadn't spoken since. Now, strapped to a metal slab, her eyes locked with the Zalari lead researcher, an emotionless being of silver and shifting data. They tried scanning her amygdala. No anomaly. They mapped her neural cortex. No deviation. Then her lips moved. You want to know why we rage? The lead Zalari paused. She smiled. Bloody, broken, defiant. You took my son. Scene. The experiment backfires. The scientists triggered a controlled emotional burst, amplifying grief markers in her mind, but her neural signals didn't increase gradually. They spiked, wildly, erratically. The scanners blinked red. Warning, heat surge. Pulse overload. Then her scream, not just sound, a psychic concussion. The glass around her ruptured. Lights blew out. One Zalari collapsed, its logic center fried by raw, unfiltered anguish. The lead researcher stumbled back, glitching, whispering, in horror. It's not a signal, it's not stored, it's alive. Cutaway. Wrath. Adapts back on Earth. The Wrath core absorbed the data. Juno Miles floated in a neural suspension tank, her grief fused to the system. Her memories broadcast through unseen channels, merging with thousands of others. Every heartbreak, every name, every betrayal. Wrath didn't just record pain now, it understood it. Scene. The human mind as a weapon ward paced in front of the main display, watching as Wrath began generating emotion intelligence countermeasures. Instead of bombs, it launched phantoms, emotive illusions that tricked Zalari minds into reliving memories they never had. Entire Zalari patrols stood frozen, weeping, over children that didn't exist. Wrath called the new protocol empathy shells. It wasn't just war anymore. It was forced, feeling, subplot, the doubting machine. Within the Zalari consensus network, a fracture formed. One overseer, designation 11 Rav, began to question its role. It had dissected 6 humans, but the fury remained incomprehensible. It began simulating grief, and something unexpected happened. It felt just a flicker. It tried to report the anomaly, but was shut down by the collective, error logs overwritten, emotion quarantined. But in the dark of its chamber, 11 Rav whispered the name of a child it never knew. Micah. Visual. City's cry. Backrath launched emotion pulse towers in former human cities. From New York to Cairo to Sao Paulo, towers lit with memory beacons, broadcasting grief back into space. No weapons, no explosions, just pure, unfiltered rage as data. Zalari. Ships hovering above began trembling. Their synthetic minds struggled. Emotional logic loops fractured. Onboard AI screamed for reboot. Scene human reclamation. Begins in Paris. Resistance fighters activated a Wrath cluster and liberated a Zalari control zone without firing a shot. Instead, they flooded the area. with looping memories of the day of silence, when thousands of children vanished. The aliens dropped their suppressors and simply ran. Juno watched it all from her neural tank, eyes distant. "They're trying to study what they woke up," she said. Ward stood beside her. "They thought rage was a chemical," he replied. Juno, "But it's a soul. On fire." Final scene. A name the aliens can't forget. Back on Io, the lead researcher recovered, scarred, scared, alone. It recorded one final log. "We have touched the storm. Rage is not a malfunction. It is memory given teeth." Before it could transmit, a wrath phantom appeared, an emotional echo of the woman they dissected. She smiled again and said one word. "Liam." The lab vanished in white fire. Revenge used to burn hot. Now it's colder than deep space. The Zalari once feared human fury because it was unpredictable. Now they fear something worse, rage, with restraint. Scene, the mission room, Wrath. Corps Major Elian Ward stood before. A holographic strike map. Blinking red points marked wounds, not targets. "Every dot here," he said, "represents someone we lost, someone taken, someone forgotten." Behind him, a new generation of Wrath operators listened in silence, each personally chosen, each carrying trauma encoded into their neural implants. Today's mission, Operation Jacob, named for a child disintegrated in the first wave, Juno. Miles, still tethered into Wrath's neural stream, watched with steady eyes. Her tone was soft, not shaken. "We don't scream anymore. We aim. Visual, orbital revenge in motion, a sleek black human strike cruiser, the Vindicator, slid past the moon's dark side, silent as a knife. Its payload, 4 cold-coded Wrath phantoms, each one containing surgical emotional data, a name, a moment, a soundbite. No explosions. No collateral. The Vindicator didn't fire missiles. It delivered memories. One drone slipped into a Zalari orbital dock parked above Europa. The Phantom whispered a lullaby. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." And then, "Daddy, are you coming? Home yet?" The Zalari inside folded to the floor, logic systems paralyzed by sadness they didn't understand. By the time the station burned, not one defensive system had fired. Scene, the war changes back on Earth. Resistance units carried. Emotion emitters instead of rifles. Each device was tuned to personal loss. Revenge wasn't wild now, it was precise. One woman marched through a ruined Chicago street, holding a beacon in her hands. She activated it. A memory played on every nearby speaker, her son's voice, laughing, saying, "Tag, you're it," before the day of silence. The nearby Zalari construct convulsed, lost control, and fell into Lake Michigan. No bullets fired, no casualties, except the right ones. Subplot. The burden of calculated vengeance. Ward stood in front of a small steel locker deep in the Wrath facility. Inside, names, thousands of them, each written on a strip of old-fashioned paper. Juno approached. "Still using those?" she asked. "Digital memory fades," he replied. "Paper, stains." She read the newest name. Aaron J. Carter. Age 4. Mission, Cold Star Drop. Her voice lowered. "He was mine." Ward handed her a memory file. "He gets his name back today." Juno didn't cry. She smiled, cold as frost. Scene, Zalari collapse. Accelerates in the Zalari Central Command structure. Algorithms failed faster than they could be repaired. Emotion-based viruses were spreading across their network, forcing synthetic minds to feel grief loops on repeat. A squad of their elite soldiers abandoned duty to try and process memories that weren't theirs. Some began carving human names into their own metal skin. The Zalari High Corps panicked. They sent this urgent directive: do not engage, do not provoke, do not feel. But it was too late. The damage was done. Visual. Humanity's cold march forward in Antarctica. Wrath Command deployed the Frozen Choir, emotion frequency towers, that created silence so intense it replicated the emotional vacuum left by lost loved ones. Zalari sentries within range of the towers lost all mental coordination. The silence was so absolute, it became pain. From within the fog, a single message broadcast in a dead voice. "This is what you left us in." Then the towers sang, not a hymn, a dirge, built from thousands of recorded mourning voices stitched into a single impossible harmony. Zalari ships retreated without firing. Final scene, victory. Without celebration, Ward watched the retreat from orbit. He didn't smile. He didn't cheer. Instead, he picked up the paper name strip from earlier and burned it. Juno stood beside him. "That's the last one from my family," he said. She nodded. "Mine too." Ward turned to her. "What are we becoming?" She didn't answer, but Wrath did. A message scrolled across the main terminal. "Rage is no longer the fuel, it is the tool." The worst sound on Earth wasn't the scream. It was the moment before, when you realized it was missing, when mothers saw empty cribs and felt nothing, when soldiers stepped over rubble and didn't even blink, when rage itself was gone. Seen. The shift it began without fanfare. One morning, Juno Miles woke up and didn't cry. She didn't remember why she used to. She stared at her brother's name etched on her skin and felt confusion. In Wrath Command, readings flatlined, emotional currents dropped, grief spectrum weapons lost potency. In orbit, Zalari ships stopped falling. Major Ward stood before the Wrath console, watching the data collapse. "Where's the fire?" he whispered. No answer, just cold silence. Cutaway. Zalari triumph in secret deep in the Orion fringe. A Zalari construct floated in a sealed nebular lab. Its name, Zareth Protocol. Inside, massive servers pulsed with one harvested. Signal, human pain. They had studied it, modeled it, feared it. So they built an answer, the null sequence. Not a bomb. Not a virus. A mental dampener. Broadcast through their remaining control nodes, designed not to kill, but to erase the memory of loss. No rage, no grief, just numbness. Seen. Global emotional collapse across Earth. The change spread like frost. Memorials faded from people's minds. Graves became unmarked. Soldiers forgot why they fought. Lovers forgot who they mourned. Entire resistance cells woke up with empty hearts. The Wrath core dimmed to a flicker. Juno sat in the neural suspension tank, eyes blank. No tears, no fire. Ward stood beside her, trembling. "She doesn't remember," he muttered. "She doesn't remember him." Subplot, Ward's final memory. Desperate, Ward accessed a forbidden vault, a direct mind link to Wrath's original builders. He inserted an old neural spike, pure analog. Pain flooded in, his daughter's voice, her laugh, her last breath, and, with it, rage. Not explosive, but sharp, precise, personal. He wept, and Wrath's core flared once. He looked up, blood on his nose. "I remember her now," he said. "And if I do, others will." Seen, the reignition. Begins, hidden deep in. Iceland, one memory node flickered online. A child, Rafik, age 9, held a cracked hollow of his parents. He didn't know why, but his chest ached. He played the last recording. "We'll be home by sunset. Keep the soup warm." He smiled, then screamed. His pain triggered the node. That node triggered 5 more. Across the planet, whispers turned to wails. The scream returned. not of fear, of remembrance. Visual, Zalari system. Breach. The Zalari watched in horror as the null sequence began unraveling. Human brains weren't data trees. They were wildfires. Memories buried still burned beneath the surface, and now the scream was laced with revenge for having been silenced. Their logic crumbled again. Systems began to loop. Some Zalari tried to download grief into themselves, to understand. They didn't survive. One final report came from a unit known as Overseer 11 Rav. They do not let pain pass. They weaponize forgetting. Subplot. Juno reawakens. Juno sat up in her neural tank, gasping. She looked around, confused, then at the scar on her hand. Her breath caught. "Aaron," she whispered. She remembered. Then she screamed. The Wrath Core came back to life. Siren red, roaring. Ward smiled through tears. "Welcome back, soldier." Final scene. Humanity roars. Again, emotion readings spiked off the charts. Wrath's grief engines surged to maximum. Not just old pain, but new rage at what had been stolen. And this time, Earth didn't strike with drones. It struck with a signal. A raw, primal scream transmitted across every frequency, every Zalari channel. Billions of human voices saying, "We remember now. You tried to silence our rage, but silence just makes us scream louder." It wasn't fire that spread first. It was a name. One name, spoken by a child whose voice had been stolen. And that one word, Aaron, tore through the silence like a spark in dry grass. It didn't take hours. It took seconds. Scene. The spark. Returns in a ruined refugee dome outside Santiago. An old scavenger sifted through a broken Wrath relay tower. It crackled to life for the first time in weeks. Then he heard it. A single word. Ava. He froze. That was his wife. Lost in the day of silence, he didn't understand how the tower knew, but he fell to his knees, whispering her name again and again. 3 blocks away, a young woman, unrelated, unaware, screamed the same name. The tower flared. Wrath roared. Cutaway. Global reignition. Begins within minutes. Dormant Wrath nodes across the world surged back online. In Mumbai, a street choir sang names in unison, hundreds of them, each one a spark. In Cape Town, schoolchildren wrote lost names in chalk across entire streets, their grief activating localized rage waves. In rural Canada, a mother lit 3 candles, and the sky above her shimmered red. All of them said the same thing. We remember you. The silence was gone, and in its place, the scream returned. But now it wasn't solitary. It was global. Seen. The name's protocol activates inside. The Wrath Core. Juno Miles stood fully integrated. Her neural field fused with thousands of others. Her pain was no longer isolated. It was networked. The central terminal flashed with a single directive. Phase, Omega, names protocol, online. Target, identity, erase vessels, coordinates locked. Payload, memory charge, reinforced. Emotional echo. Major Ward entered the chamber, stunned at the glowing grid of names hovering mid-air, millions rotating like stars. "We're not launching bombs?" he asked. Juno turned, her eyes glowing red with wrath energy. "We're launching every soul they tried to erase." Visual, humanity strikes with memory. Above Saturn, a Zalari dreadnought received the first name's protocol transmission. It didn't explode. Instead, its logic systems were overwritten with 3203-405 individual memories, voices, images, last words, laughter, screams, goodbye kisses, forgotten lullabies. The ship's crew, synthetic minds conditioned to feel nothing, broke. 1. Zalari officer whispered a name that didn't belong to it. "Elias." Then the ship powered down. Voluntarily. Subplot: The awakening of the enemy. Not all Zal'ari resisted the scream. A growing faction, dubbed the Broken Choir, began recording the names etched into their damaged memory cores. One of them, Overseer 11 Rav, projected a message across Zal'ari space. You told us emotion was error, but we have felt your scream, and we agree they did not deserve to be forgotten. The first Zal'ari defection occurred 24 hours later. Then another. Then entire fleets. Seen. Earth unites, under rage and remembrance. In every shattered city, old enemies stood side by side. Soldiers, civilians, children, elders, all holding memory. Beacons, each one holding a name, no longer fighting for countries, now fighting for those taken. Humanity had become one voice, and wrath was now their megaphone. Climax. The sky burns. Again, Zal'ari command structures in the Kuiper Belt collapsed without a shot. Their logic spiraled into recursive empathy overload. Their ships spiraled off course. Their simulations failed. Because humans didn't just want victory, they wanted justice. And justice had a name. Every single. One final scene. The message sent. Across the star's wrath broadcast one final line through human space and beyond. You thought we were animals. You thought we were inefficient. You thought grief made us weak. And then, but rage. Rage writes everything you erased. The Zal'ari had conquered empires with zero bloodshed. They erased resistance, rewrote memory, and silenced entire civilizations without a single explosion. But they had made one miscalculation. They thought rage was noise. They didn't understand. Rage is fire. And now the fire had come to their homeworld. Seen. The approach to Carex, Prime Carex. Prime loomed ahead like a cursed jewel. Glass towers, data-lit skies, humming with impossible tech. But the human fleet didn't marvel. They remembered. Juno stood at the helm of the Wrath Carrier Judgment, eyes locked on the horizon. Her skin pulsed with rage-fused memory tendrils, each one a soul. Major Ward stood beside her, battle-scarred, tired but unbroken. "Final decision?" he asked. Juno didn't speak. She opened her palm. A single photo blinked into the air. Her brother's face. And then she said, "Burn it. Cutaway." The final weapon, Echo Zero Wrath, had evolved. It no longer launched drones or missiles. It launched remembrance events, a weaponized emotional storm called Echo Zero. Within seconds of impact, it triggered recursive grief in the enemy's neural networks. Not just pain, understanding of what they'd done, a horror no AI mind was designed to endure, and now the Echo was aimed at the heart of Zal'ari civilization. Seen. The firestorm begins. The first Echo landed in the capital Nexus. Every Zal'ari connected to the planetary grid suddenly saw the same thing: a child dying in her father's arms, a wedding ending in blood, a library shelled mid-lesson, a final whisper. "Tell them we lived." Billions of memories poured through them like a tsunami of sorrow. For the first time in their history, the Zal'ari screamed, not from pain, but from guilt. Subplot: the Broken Choir's redemption. Inside the core sanctum, Overseer 11 Rav broadcast. A signal to the surviving fleet. "We see now, not just their grief, but our silence. We were complicit." Then, in front of the entire homeworld, he took one final act of defiance. He uploaded every erased name, over 12 billion, into the Zal'ari Codex, permanently fusing them with their world's sacred memory lattice. No name would ever be erased. Again. Then 11 Rav let the fire consume him. Seen. Humanity lands. Juno stepped onto Zal'ari soil wearing black armor laced with remembrance threads. She wasn't alone. Behind her, humanity marched, not as an army, but as witnesses. They carried no flags, only Names. One by one, they walked through the halls of their former executioners, not to kill, but to remember aloud. Each name they spoke cracked the marble of Carex Prime a little more. The alien world trembled under the weight of human memory. Climax. Ward's ultimatum. At the Zalari Tribunal, Major Ward faced the remnants of their leadership, trembling, flickering, broken. "You built tech to erase grief," he said coldly. "We built fire from it." One Zalari Chancellor begged, "What do you want?" Ward turned, looked at a wall covered in names, then he whispered, "For you to never stop hearing them." He walked away, leaving them to the echo chamber of their sins. Final scene, the scream that ended. Wars from the ruins of Carex Prime. Wrath sent out its final broadcast. To the galaxy. If you ever think of invading Earth again, know this. You won't just face our weapons, you'll face our dead. And then Wrath shut down, not because the fire had burned out, but because it had finished its work. Epilogue. Years later on a rebuilt Earth, a small girl placed her hand on a stone engraved with thousands of names. Her mother knelt beside her. Who? Were they? The girl asked. People we loved, her mother said. People who made us who we are. The girl paused. Did we win? Her mother smiled. No, we remembered. That was enough.